Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Random Life on Monday, and your host is Ellen Bonova. And today I want to talk about the topic of finding out if you are a difficult person to work with. And this is a topic that came up recently in a couple of conversations. And one of the conversations was about how a lot of humanitarian organizations are struggling, the funding is dwindling, and people are being laid off, and therefore the remaining staff, how to manage all of those stress and cover for other people, but at the same time, feeling like, oh my God, am I becoming this difficult person to work with, especially at the managerial level, maybe? And some of my clients raised this topic with me and said, oh, I feel like I'm becoming a difficult person to work with. I usually am not like that, but because of the stress and all the things, I just don't want to be that person, right? And therefore, I wanted to do this episode to really do a bit of an introduction about how do you know at the very easiest way, because there could be many different indicators that we could look at, but the easiest way, how would you know if you're becoming difficult, or in other words, if you're becoming the manager you don't want to, and what to do about it, right? So, and that would be the first reason. And the second reason, I wanted to also make this distinction that the reason why this topic might feel so good for you to think about is that some people, I think, confuse being difficult as a person, as a professional to work with, versus critical thinking and criticizing the program or certain things and activities in the humanitarian sector. And they just feel like, oh, I'm being difficult for my management, therefore they don't want to promote me or they don't want to extend my contract, and therefore I shouldn't be criticizing what's going on and how we can improve it. And we need to start maybe distinguishing those two. So that's why I wanted to do this episode to talk about finding out how you know if you're being difficult in relation to working with other colleagues or other supervisees or maybe even management, right? And what can you do if that's not how you want to be as a professional, and especially that's not how you want to show up in stressful times, right? So the examples that I have received or heard from people, and also my examples of who we consider difficult people, I think there could be a number of ways. So that's why the first thing you may want to know for yourself is, okay, who do I believe is a difficult person, and how how or why do I label them, right, as a difficult person, right? What are the things that they have done that would make me feel like, oh, this is a difficult person to work with, right? And here are the examples that I have heard so far from a lot of different humanitarian clients that I coach. The behaviors are, I would say, one of the main category could be blame, right? So, like, we would consider a manager difficult if the manager blames us for not having figured out things or not having done the things that the exact way that they wanted to, or they haven't explained but they expected us, expected us to do things, and we just felt like we did our best with the information we had. Or a client of mine was telling me that he keeps changing the report to his boss, and then she would continue saying that this is not how I want this, right? And then when he asked her, how do you want it, she wouldn't give him an answer. And this would be like the uh, major behavior that we all find, oh, this is a difficult person to work with. So blame is central part of that conversation, right? Another one is a dividing personality, or what is the other word? I'm forgetting. But anyway, the dividing personalities would be like us against them, right? So we are the we are this team and they are against us, even though we're in the same organization, maybe even the same operation, but we just feel like this office versus that office. And then there are people who say, if you're not supporting our projects, if you're not supporting me, then you are against us, right? So this type of dividing personalities we find also difficult to work with. The third one in the category, I would say, and again, these are not in any way by importance, right? But just common ways things show up or common behaviors that we observe is the part about how it's unpredictable personalities, meaning that we somehow got the assurance from them saying that, oh, this is how we're going to go. And then later we find out that that's not how we're going to go. And then they change their mind, or they promised something to someone else, they said something to someone else, and then you just feel like, I don't know what's going on because I was told this is how we're going to go, but this is not how we're going to go, right? So there might be a lot of chaos around unpredictable behavior where you don't know what will happen, or you don't know how this person may change their mind tomorrow, you don't know what they may say to whom, and then you just feel like mm, you don't know where you would go with this. And um if you like had the criteria or maybe like the indicator to know how are you being if you are being a difficult person, or if you are, and difficult is in quotes obviously because it's a subjective definition, right? But still we feel like a lot of us humanitarians can agree on certain personalities that we just feel like, oh, that's a different difficult person to work with. And those personalities that we say are difficult person to work with, they tend to have some things in common, which are they don't tend to trust us as professionals. They don't tend to communicate clearly, but say things in chaotic ways, or think in chaotic ways, or they don't have structure, or feel like they are driven by um, enemy, us against them type, instead of working towards the overall goal that we're all pursuing, right? So they all have these type of things in common. Now, when you're asking yourself, okay, what is my indicator to know that this is the person I don't want to be? And how am I going to find out if I'm being that person? Then here are two ways that you can easily do this test with yourself, if you will. So one is the test about um, what do you do, or what are the ways you show up with other people? And I will give you examples in a minute. And then how do you do that, right? So the first one is what do you do in relation to others, or how do you show up in relationship with in relation to other people? Is, for instance, if you say things like, this is not how I wanted to have done. How couldn't you? You should have known better. All of these are accusatory statements. They don't contribute to solution at all, right? It's more like making the other person feel bad, making yourself feel bad, and then everyone is just losing. So this would be the common way that we would be like saying things that shows our frustration, that shows our disappointment, maybe that shows our dissatisfaction with how things are done, without actually explaining or getting into what you have expected and how it's not the case, right? So that would be the first one. The second one is, how do you do that? Now, sometimes interestingly, that people tend to um, like say things that are supposedly constructive. For instance, oh, you should have done XYZ thing, then it would have gotten this result. They may say those, excuse me, but they say them in a way that you feel like you can feel their energy of them hating you or judging you, or feeling like, I mean, how stupid you must be to not know this, kind of like undermining ways, right? And then because you sense the tone behind it, then you feel like, oh, I really don't want to work with this person I don't like working with this person, and then you start labeling them as difficult. Now, if we turn that around and then say, okay, how are we showing up that way in our own lives? Then it gets interesting, right? Whether it's at work or in personal life. And we might be often doing both of those things, if not only just what are we saying, but also how are we saying them. So the way that you can really start observing yourself as to, okay, I don't want to be that difficult person that other people feel drained to work with me, then what we want to do is we want to remove this blame mindset or mentality. We need to remove at least this chaotic unpredictableness of I don't know where I'm going and how I'm going, and then spreading this around. And then we need to be also um, removing things that create division between teams, between offices, and then takes away the attention from actually serving the people that we want to, right? Because then we just get into the ego conversations of this is my territory, or this is where I'm supposed to be doing, and this is where it's supposed to be doing, and then we get so territorial, or we get so us against them, and therefore we don't really focus on how we can best serve the refugees or displaced people or people who are suffering by conflicts or disasters. We are not really focusing on those things, right? So, and then what ends up oftentimes happening, which you all know, is that if we keep staying also working in those environments, this affects us so negatively, even if we're not involved in such conversations, right? So, therefore, if we don't want to create those environments for ourselves and for the people that work with us, then we need to learn how not to be that difficult person, right? So, the way that we can really look at it is, okay, if we remove at least blame, if we remove the division, if we remove distrust, if we remove chaotic, confusing energy, then how or what is left, or what can we focus on, right? And that's where it becomes such a beautiful thing for us to always look at it. Okay, how can I every time focus on what will solve this thing, whatever it is that I'm working on, what will solve this, and what will solve it in a way that does not take a lot of my mind drama, does not take anyone's mind drama, or anyone feeling bad, me feeling bad. How can I uh, work on the solution in the way that best serves me and other people, right? And if we can focus on that, then no matter what happened in the past, or no matter what the things didn't happen and why we should have done it, or we should have known this better, how could we, all of those things just don't become even a topic, right? Because we're not really focusing on that. Because if we're going to focus on that more, then not only we're not going to get to anywhere we want to, we're now making the other person feel bad, we're making ourselves feel bad, and also we're not going to even solve any of the problem better. Instead, we're going to solve it in the most frustrated ways, right? And that's not what we're wanting, especially when the situation is so getting difficult at work as well, that we don't want to add any additional unnecessary emotions that we don't want to experience. And therefore, now how do we remove blame, for instance, right? So blame usually comes from us expecting the other person doing XYZ in the way that we thought they would do, or in the way that we agreed they would do. And then the reality kicks in and things don't happen. Now, whenever things don't happen, our immediate reaction usually might be that, well, wait a minute, we agreed on this. Why didn't you do it? Right? And then it gets into a blaming energy. Except that, as I said, this doesn't help. And not only that, now we're being a difficult person. So, in that moment, excuse me, in that moment, going into the acceptance of this is the reality, or this is what we have, right? This is what we currently have. Now, what are we going to with what are we going to do with this? It's a bit like I feel the example that I like often use in the past is that I used to be so mad at people who would come to an appointment late. I would be like, how could they? Why shouldn't they? Da, 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 all of those things, right? And then I realized, why do I expect them to come to the appointment on time? Yes, we agreed on this. Yes, I expect that. That doesn't mean that they would honor it. And it doesn't mean that I should be um, frustrated about it either. Because if I'm frustrated about it, then my appointment with them is not going to go anywhere, anyway, the way that I want to, right? And I don't want my frustration influence our appointment. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't do anything about it or I don't talk about this later, and I will, but I can also do that without involving my frustration, right? I can also have my meeting, have my appointment, and then afterwards I could say, I would love for you to let me know in case you are late next time. Or I usually love doing things on time. And if you don't, after 5 minutes, I'm going to leave, whatever your ways of doing things, right? And I don't need to be frustrated because frustration is not going to help the other person. I'm not going to change the other person magically by me being frustrated. And the same goes here with the blame. Just because I blame them does not mean that they're going to magically change, or they're going to now say, "Oh, I made them pissed, so therefore let me just go and do things magically better the way they want to." They won't be able to do that, and that's why the only way we can really get to solving the thing that we want to, we can actually discuss with them as to, okay, I thought this is what I expected, or this is what we had agreed, and the result is this. I wonder why that's happening. What can we do about it? Why do you think you are not able to get the things the way that we agreed? Right? So we can now have a bit of a more conversation, and also notice that in those moments, oftentimes what we, and especially I am guilty of this as well, is where we managers then say, "Oh, you are not able to do this. Let me take it over and then do it myself," and then make you feel bad anyway. That does not work either, right? So that's why, and we may not be able to have all the time in the world to be explaining or to getting to understand why things are not happening the way we want to, but at least dedicating some of the time to do that is essential because that's part of our job. So that's why the method that I really love that Alex Hormozy talks a lot about is, I think he calls it 3D. So what that means is, first you document what you are doing, and in our case it may not really work, but essentially having the checklist of, in order to get this type of thing done, this is the checklist of these things need to be done, and then doing it yourself and demonstrating to the other person, and then getting them to do it with you, or getting them to do it and then coming back to you with the feedback. And this way it is very I don't know, for lack of a better word, predictable, but that's maybe also very constraining for some people, which I understand. And if that's the case, then the other way could be, we talk about with the staff member, and when we are delegating, we think about what level of delegation it is. It's a delegation where they just implement the task, or it's a delegation where we give them the authority as well. And I personally love giving the delegation with the authority, so they figure out and they solve and then they come to me. That way, I believe that they grow more, but also there is the element of me getting frustrated bigger, right? And that's, of course, my job to like clean through my emotions around it, but at the same time, we can discuss afterwards why it did happen and why it didn't happen. Now, that would be the way to remove blame. The way to remove chaotic or unpredictable behavior is, I think, if the if we continue following our egos or our, it has to be my way, or I need to do this so that I can take it over, like the territorial thing or whatever it is, then it's likely that my energy will be very, like, based on personalities basically. And the way that I want to structure the work is always based on the people that we're serving. Whatever the thing that is most needed for the people that we're serving, then I would go with that, and I would use that as a compass to um, make my decisions around things. And it's no longer about me personally or about the other person or us fighting together or against each other. That wouldn't really be about that, right? And the same goes for like dividing us versus them type of personalities. I know that I wouldn't want to be that type of like person or be labeled as such person or difficult person, because I don't want to be a problem solver at work at the expense of getting myself a bad reputation, or at the expense of not serving the people that I want to, at the expense of other people suffering around me, right? I wouldn't want to do that. So that's why I would never really want to go for, okay, how can I win in this situation? Or how can I show to the other office that we're better than them? I wouldn't want to do that, because that just creates so much of the unnecessary suffering and unnecessary negative toxic environment that I don't want to put myself or my people through. And therefore, in such situations, whatever my ego is saying about, oh, you should be, I don't know, winning at this, you should be showing off, or you should be proving, or you should be showing that you are better than the other office, I would really like feel whatever the emotion that is happening based on ego, and then coming back to, okay, what are the people that I want to serve? What do they need, or how can I serve them better with my team? And where I can focus on solving those problems and obstacles to get to the support better, instead of uh, involving in the office politics that we don't want to do that anyway, right? So I hope this was helpful for you to understand about how you might find out if you are being a difficult person in such situations, how you might also find out some of the common examples that you may be also judging in other people. And then whenever we're judging other people about, oh, I don't want to be this person, that might be also a good sign for us to then learn, okay, what is it that we don't like about them? Why? And then how we can also prevent us from, excuse me, from doing this. And most importantly, what are the common things that we can actually avoid that will guarantee us that we don't ever become difficult people to work with, such as blame, such as confusion, unpredictability, distrust, right? All of this, or making fear, or threatening, or being aggressive to people. All of these behaviors, we know that don't help us build relationships well, and also make other people feel bad about themselves, or they may not like us eventually, or we may not like ourselves after having done this every time. And therefore, if we can avoid them, then we're not, like, we are avoiding the risk of becoming difficult people. So if you feel like you are in the midst of a bit struggling around this, and you want to work on this, whatever it is, whether maybe you don't want to be blaming anyone anymore, including yourself, you don't want to be in this chaotic or confused situation, or you don't want to be in this place of territorialism or battling the office politics, but you don't want to, then absolutely come coach with me. I would love to help you get through this so that you know how to navigate all of this around, and you are clear as to what the compass you want to continue working towards and getting to that impact. Have a beautiful week, everyone, and see you very soon. Bye.